Hey everyone, I hope you all are doing well. And as usual, I thank you all for joining me here. I'm your host, Danielle Speaks TV. All right, so I want to make a few commentary on the Rico case currently going on with rapper P. Diddy, birth name Sean Combs. Now, I'm having some concerns about the case because I really feel like the government stretched a little bit too far. I don't know if because they got some kind of conviction on R. Kelly, Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, why they feel like P. Diddy actually is in that same boat. And I would have to disagree with that. So what I want to do is talk about why I believe he will beat this Rico case, which is Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organization Act. And, when you hear that, you might think that the charges sound very scary. But do you know that they were originally designed to take down organized crime? Like mob bosses. But when you look at the details, everything just don't add up. No, the hurdle of proving a pattern of crime. Now, this is a job for the prosecution. Now, in order to win a RICO case, right, the prosecution must prove that someone wasn't just involved in some kind of one-off mistake, but they were actually, a part of a continuous pattern of criminal behavior. Now, with P. Diddy, the evidence often points to isolated business dealings rather than some kind of coordinated effort to run a criminal enterprise. Now we have John, who is on Sugar Daddy, and me name Cindy. Now, Mr. John look like him have a bag of money. He live across the state. Me and John talk like a bit, and John say, come over here so I make we have some fun. So me pack up my ass, me go up on one plane and me go over John, and we do a thing, some drugs were involved, and we get high, and John did invite Cindy as well, and next Cindy from over Australia. He was a freak. So Tony come as well, right? So all of we did it, and we have RG, right? Drugs are involved. I saw me see it. That is exactly how me see it. Now, should John be charged for Rico? Now, when you look at the prostitution part and the state to state moving of people, I can see that his attorneys, they're taking aim at the prosecution narrative by stressing that, the evidence linking him directly to a coordinated effort or moving people for prostitution is thin. No, they're arguing that isolated incident, and no matter how salacious and nasty and disgusting it is, it actually does not prove that he was directing a state-spanning criminal prostitution enterprise network. You understand? So, courts today, I think they should be very cautious about using RICO, a law that is really for organized crime. Now, let me just put it simply. It is incredibly tough to show that his day-to-day business operations form any kind of criminal pattern. You understand? And since, and since business, they all have mistakes or questionable decisions, that happens in every industry. The charges stretches the law too far for someone like him. Now, we know that P. Diddy has a top-notch team, right? So while he has a team that has tackled, high-profile cases before, his defense is expected to pick apart every detail of the charge. So what they'll do is they'll carefully scrutinize the evidence and emphasize that typical business practices aren't criminal. So his lawyers can shift the focus away from sensationalism, right? So they're likely to point out that the prosecution's evidence is just, too thin. And in fact, it doesn't really connect to any kind of organized criminal scheme, in my opinion. So at the end of the day, many people see P. Diddy as a savvy businessman, and he has built a whole empire. And when you compare that to a cold blooded crime usually associated with RICO charges, then you will realize that the differences are very striking. Talk the truth. No, the documentation of many of his legitimate business ventures, it actually paints a picture more in line with somebody who is a high powered entrepreneur, rather than someone who is running some kind of secret criminal network. So let me just put that in everyday terms. Business disagreements or awkward partnerships aren't the same as orchestrating crime conspiracies. I mean, seriously, the prosecution's argument is just so weak. It's unbelievable that this even got to, a federal case. You would need evidence in order to prove this, right? And normally, evidence, we're gonna have people, insiders or former associates. But what you have to remember is that them could around it on some kind of plea deal. So for them story is not going to be airtight. So if you have a crucial element of the case, which is the state to state prostitution charge, which is just solely based on shaky, inconsistent evidence, a judge might very well rule that it really does not meet the high level standards necessary for a RICO conviction. So you look at all of this together when it comes to the prostitution thing, and there's a high burden of proof that the prosecution has to show. Remember, RICO requires a continuous, well documented criminal pattern, right? And the evidence for linking Diddy's operation to such a pattern, especially through his state to state prostitution charge, is simply, to be honest, just not strong enough. And to me, the prosecution, their argument is weak and they have fragmented evidence. It relies on, I believe, unreliable testimonies, right? And it really doesn't show a clear criminal enterprise that is running across state lines. Now, again, I always have to say it because when you look at Diddy's extensive record as a legitimate entrepreneur, it makes it very hard for the prosecution to convincingly paint him as a mob boss. You understand? Or, a criminal mastermind who orchestrates illegal activities. It's just not showing that. So the argument goes without saying that while the charges are serious in nature, they're built on a framework that does not hold up, in my opinion. And if you closely examine everything and how different states handle such crimes, and the quality of the evidence that they actually use that is available, this combined with a robust legal defense and a well-established legitimate business legacy makes it likely that Diddy will beat this RICO case. You understand? If you understand what me I talk, so if you understand what me I say so far, leave it in the comment section below. Public opinion matters. So even if it shouldn't govern court verdicts, it sometimes does. Now, we have P. Diddy's image to look at, and when we say the image, we say an innovator, right? And this will play a big part in the RICO case. Now, the media narrative, increasingly pushes back against applying outdated crime laws to modern business practices. So we have judges and jurors, and they recognize that a law originally intended for mobsters might not be the best fit for complicated large-scale business operations. So this evolving mindset in the legal system could very well work in his favor. I could just line up everything right now because my mouth kind of hurt me. Now, I could just put it all together in a nutshell, right? The case against P. Diddy, it has significant challenges, right? So we look at the evidence, right? And RICO requires that you have solid demonstration of continuous criminal activity, something that business errors or maybe one-off incident don't qualify as, all right? Now, we have an expert defense team, right? And, his experienced lawyers, they know the ins and outs of complex cases, right? And they are set to dismantle the weak parts of the prosecution's argument. When we look at P. Diddy, we look that this is a businessman. So when you look at, an extensive look at who he is as a man, then you see said documented him have business practices that show a pattern of entrepreneurial success rather than some kind of criminal conduct. You understand what I'm trying to say? Now, courts are slowly adapting and judges are wary of applying laws built for organized crime to business worlds. So in simple terms, it looked like the Rico case might be, Lord God, a mismatch, you understand, for what P. Diddy actually represents. Now, instead of a clear-cut criminal enterprise, what we're actually seeing is a story of high-stakes business decisions that, and while them disgusting and dramatic, they don't necessarily cross the line into criminality. Because you cannot look at grown-ass people and tell them that they can pick their ass up and go over to P. Diddy for a freak off. You cannot have a civil suit that has been a success $20 million later, and now we have a criminal case. We have a federal case for baby oils found in bathroom. The only things we saw with our eyes was the tape, and she got paid.